I swear Waves is going crazy with this AI machine learning plugin thing. If you're not keeping up with all these new AI plugins that are coming out, you're going to get left behind. Waves just released their second plugin in the Curve series called Curves AQ, which stands for, I think, maybe Autonomous EQ. Now, they're claiming to be the first ones to release this type of technology, but I think there are a few others on the market that are kind of similar. That being said, we're going to dive deep into all the different features of this AQ plugin, spanning from all the adaptive learning and automatic categorization to some advanced mixing tricks like using their built-in Mixsense. I'll also show you how to use this plugin to basically mimic the effects of Trackspacer, which is a pretty cool little bonus. And if you need help with your mixes just in general, I made a really awesome cheat sheet you can download. There's a link in the description. You can print it out and keep it by you when you're mixing your next track. So go and check that out if that sounds interesting. Just like all my product videos, I always want to look a little bit underneath the hood. This is called Plugin Doctor. This allows us to see the output of the plugin to see what the heck it's actually doing. This isn't really going to give us too much because this requires us to feed it a signal because it is a machine learning model. So it needs some sort of input to compensate and make adjustments. All right, so there are high pass and low pass filters. If we take these and move these around, they have 3 different cutoff settings for us, 24, 48, and 72 dB. If we look at the phase analysis of this filter, you can see that they are not linear phase. So just something to keep in mind if you plan on using this with multiple sources that are all phase linked. 48 is even worse. And I just put out a video up here, so you can go and check that out if you want to learn more about what phase can do and how it can be destructive in your mixes, especially when you're using high pass filters. So I would suggest, if at all possible, just not to use this and use some sort of filtering before it if you need a high pass filter or low pass filter. Just going to jump into an example mix. Let's put Curves AQ on a guitar bus. So these are distorted guitars. They sound like this. Pretty loud. So what does this thing do? It's pretty remarkable, actually. So when you load this up, you just have a few options. There's this blinking learn button. It wants you to capture some of the sound of whatever you want to automatically EQ. And you should also choose between an instrument or a mix. So you can actually use this as a mastering tool, which I'll have a video to shoot this out against Gullfoss if you're interested in that. Expect that to come out here shortly. But for the time being, this is on guitar, so we'll choose instrument. Now we just hit learn. And it needs to capture some audio so it can build a model in this plugin and try to identify what the best target EQ curve should be for that source. We're going to hit learn and hit play. And you can see back here, this faint line is the average target of what this source is, these guitars. And then like magic, it generates multiple target curves that are most likely what we want for our music. It also was able to identify that this was an overdriven guitar. But if you want to do this manually, you can just click on this little button, go to guitars, and then there's a choice for overdrive guitar. Once it has learned the input source and given you these presets, it basically unlocks a bunch of other features. Now we have the ability to go in and fine-tune this target curve using these 4 parameters. This is basically an adjustment for the air, so you can see how the target is shifting there. Here is what they're calling harmonics, so the harmonic content, which can give it some density and some richness. It automatically finds where the fundamental would be, so this is going to be like the rhythm or the heavier part of the mix. And then also we have an adjustment for like the low frequencies or the sub information. So at this point, let's just jump through these different presets and see if anything sounds better than what we had originally. And I really shouldn't call these presets because these are actually adaptive targets. Gross. That one is not right at all. I also don't really like that one. But these are alternative tones. What's surprising is that all 3 of these estimated targets sounded pretty good. It was almost like we had different IRs for our guitar. So I think these first two are the best. I don't like the sizzle in this one, but I know a lot of modern sounding guitars often kind of like that. I normally would put a multi-band compressor to control the low end of the guitars, but this is automatically making sure that the low end doesn't ever leave this target profile. So it's almost like an EQ and a compressor and an exciter all in one. It's kind of wild. Now, the amount of these different profiles can be adjusted using this big old knob right here in the middle. If you like what it's doing, but you feel it's too much, you just dial this back. It's kind of like a mix knob, essentially. And you can see how it's affecting the overall EQ here. And if you haven't figured this out yet, if it's red, that means it's boosting those frequencies. If it's blue, it means it's cutting them. So at 100, it adds a lot of these weird artifacts that I'm not really digging. Let's dial this back. It sounded really good around 50. So I've changed my mind. I'm going to use this sizzly one. Now we can adjust this target using these different options. So if we want more meat or low end in the guitars, like let's say you have some super detuned guitars, you can just adjust that target with this. And you can also slide this left and right and kind of customize where the low target is actually occurring. So if we want to boost like 90 hertz, we can do that. Or if we want to cut it more, clean it up. So let's boost some of the harmonics to give it a little bit more texture. Like right there, it's adding a nice attack to the guitar without making it sound harsh. And then finally, if we want to add a little bit more sparkle or air, we can do that with this A knob. Cool. That's sounding pretty amazing to me right now. If we want to adjust the amount that it's boosting or that it's cutting out, we can do that using these sliders right here. So if we feel like it's sucking too much life out of the low end and you're not getting like the chugs to bloom, we can just pull that back. Same with the boost. If you think it's adding too much energy, just pull this back and you can dial it in perfectly. So you see these vertical lines? You can turn them on and off with this button here. But what's really cool is that not only can we click and adjust where these crossover points are, irrespective of the target, but it allows us to then also solo the band. So we can hear what the sounds are within the band. And we have independent control over the amount of boost and cut. Okay, so if it's too sizzly or if it feels like it's lunging too much, you can just click on this red number, drag it down, and you can see that that red target curve is no longer boosting as much. Okay, so it drops it down to like 29% of whatever it would go to before. Same with the cuts. If you feel like it's cutting too much in a certain area, you can dial that back. And it's band selective. It's such a cool little thing. And again, if you want to do this globally, you have these sliders left and right here that you can do that with. Tilt allows you to completely change this target based on the overall brightness. So think of this like a tilt EQ, right? If you push this up, now the top end is going to be very, very bright and it sucks more of the bass out. If you go the other way and we want the entire target to feel a little bit darker, you just pull this down and it'll shift it that way. It's nice for fine-tuning the final target once you kind of get it dialed in. Offset allows you to basically shift the endpoints of the target to get them out of the way if you want to extend, let's say, the bass, for example, a little bit deeper. Some of these targets might sound perfect, but they might take too much of that sub out. If you want to keep it, you can just offset it and shift the target farther to the left so that you're maintaining more of those sub frequencies, and then the roll off happens a little bit deeper. Or let's say you want to roll off more bass, you can actually offset it the other direction, and now it'll cut it a little bit more aggressively. And this is great if you want to adjust that where that fundamental or that lowest note might be on the instrument so that it doesn't suck the life out of it when it hits the low notes. There's one more thing that was unlocked when we pushed that learn button, and that's this dynamic static slider. I love this. I think this is such a great idea because a lot of these automatic adjustment EQ plugins can sometimes just feel like there's too much movement or it's too like washy sounding. This kind of chills everything out and allows it to be a little bit more persistent, almost like a normal EQ. But it still is somewhat adaptive and it is customized to your source audio. So let me just show you what I mean. And now let's go to static. For something like guitars, I tend to like it being a little bit more dynamic. For the most part, it makes it feel like the guitars are a little bit more alive, like they're lunging out of the speakers this way. But for something that you want to be more focused and consistent, like maybe a lead vocal, you can shift this to be static and it'll just lock in the tone without it getting too wild. So really, really cool feature. Of course, we can listen to just the cuts by clicking on this little delta icon. So you can hear what this plugin is removing, and you can also listen to what's being boosted. So you hear that it's so dynamic. It's adding like this like aggressive attack to the guitars, which is actually kind of cool for this genre. Now you also have your input gain and output gain. It's important to make sure you're not clipping. It's just good practice to make sure that your gain staging stays consistent. Now, if you're a big nerd like me and you want to go even deeper, they have a whole bunch of advanced controls for this plugin. And now we have access to attack and release parameters. So the attack is going to basically be the attack time for this dynamic equalization process. Same with the release. That's how long it's going to keep the signal either attenuated or boosted before it returns it back to that target curve. Precision is basically how accurate the EQ boosts and cuts are. You can think of this as like a Q value over the entire frequency range. There's probably like 1,000 different EQ bands that are lying all within this plugin. And as you turn this more and more to the right, you're basically activating them to become really, really narrow. So it helps to target and pull out anything that might be ringing that is a really narrow bandwidth. What I find is that if you increase this precision too much, it adds a lot of weird artifacts. So the default is at 30, and you can see the general shape of these bands. It's pretty broad, and as we increase this, you see how they're getting smaller and tighter, especially up here. And if we listen to the sound, it starts turning into kind of like a white noise, snow kind of crunchy sound to it. I'm not a huge fan of it. I think the default setting is like a home run at 30, but feel free to experiment with this. Auto makeup gain is a nice feature here because that allows us to maintain a consistent perceived loudness as we're making these adjustments, so we're not tricking ourselves into thinking certain EQ moves are better. Limiter is set to, I think, minus 0.1 dB. That's just there to make sure that if this is at the end of a mastering chain, you don't go over 0 dB. I don't mind the sound of this limiter, but you can always disable that. Balance allows you to change how this plugin works. You can actually put it in a mid-side mode so that you can target these frequencies just in the mid channel or in the sides. And that's pretty cool feature to kind of add some additional stereo width if you want to, let's say, boost maybe the top end of the guitars on just the sides. There's a mix knob that allows you to dial in parallel processing if you want. I find it's helpful to just pull it back when you're trying to fine tune the last adjustments on this plugin to make sure you're not overdoing it. And finally, there is a phase inversion button here. Don't know why that's there. Maybe it's there to check to see if it made your like snare drum out of phase with the rest of your kit or something if you have this on a snare drum. So maybe it's useful. Now there's one more feature that I haven't talked about, and that's this thing that's grayed out up here. And this is a really, really cool feature, so you do not want to sleep on this. To have access to this guy, we have to enable our sidechain. Okay, so on Cubase, we click this little button, it activates sidechaining. What this does is it basically, here, I'll read it. I'll read it straight from the plugin itself. Allows sidechaining audio from other tracks to dynamically change the process based on conflicting frequencies. What that means is this basically turns this plugin into Trackspacer. It will take the signal that you feed it and then create a dynamic EQ that then subtracts those frequencies from whatever this plugin is on. So why is that important? So if you're a hip hop person, you can put curve EQ on the beat and then sidechain in your lead vocal, and it will dynamically duck and remove frequencies from the beat only when the vocal is present. So it helps to carve out additional space in your mix so that everything has a bigger spot to live in. So for example, if we have this on the guitar bus, let's send the vocal bus to it. So now when we play these two together, these green lines are what is being removed in real time. So this will really help if you have an instrument that's like stuck and it feels buried in a mix, allows it to pull it forward. And if we just want to use this plugin as like Trackspacer, we can basically turn this to 0. And so it's no longer doing any boosting or attenuation towards the target, but it's only just removing the frequencies in the sidechain from the signal. So let's go through what the usual workflow looks like to use this plugin. So let's just go to like the bass track. We're going to put Waves Curves AQ on the bass. I'm just going to set up as an instrument, hit the learn button, hit play. It's going to learn its target profile. At this point, it's identified a bunch of targets. We're going to then just click through the presets, see if anything sounds pleasing, and then we're going to fine tune it. Now, I'm pretty happy with that bass tone, but we'll see what Waves comes up with. This is actually a kind of a cool tone if you're going for a really scooped bass tone. Probably be really good in like just like hard rock in general. Let's just throw this with the drum stem and see how it sounds a little bit more in context with the mix. And we'll also throw the guitars in there. I'm kind of digging this, but I feel like it's too much. Let's go back in solo and make a few adjustments. I feel like it's maybe pulling out a little bit too much of this mid-range, so we can boost that up a little bit. Yeah. Maybe try to do a little bit more pick attack and air. I love how it's clamping down in that low end without it feeling like there's a compressor on there. It's just rock solid. And then the next thing I would do is adjust this dynamic and static knob. And since this is bass, this is one of those instances where I want it to be a little bit more focused and consistent in terms of the tone in the sub frequencies. And then let's make an overall adjustment with this big knob. Bring back in context with guitars and drums. It's a little bit of a different take on that original bass tone, but I think for this mix, it works. And that's the other thing I like about this plugin is it gives you a little different perspective on the different types of tones you could have in a mix, just in case you might have like a blind spot and didn't realize that, oh man, a scoop bass tone actually sounds really cool on this track. And I know what everybody's probably thinking. They want to know how it sounds on vocals. Let's do it. Let's put this bad boy on a vocal bus. All right.
Are they ready for this?
The raw vocal to me sounds a little bit muddy, and I'm wishing there was a little bit more air. So let's see if these targets identified that. It found out, it knew it was a male vocal. That's cool.
Awaken eyes, can you cover the truth? I can be anything you dream. It's all in vain, you've shown up. A soul is cratered, hopeless.
Definitely not that one.
Awaken eyes.
I'm kind of torn between these two, I think. So let's keep that air. I'm going to do a little boost there.
Awaken eyes. Never wanted to say.
I'm going to adjust the amount of attenuation because I don't want it to get lispy.
Awaken now. Somebody, can't you say? Awaken.
I feel like this fundamental or this low needs to come down. It's just too boomy still.
Awaken eyes, can you cover the truth? I can be anything you dream. It's all in vain, you've shown up. A soul is cratered, hopeless. Awaken eyes.
So the harmonic is nice because it'll help it cut. And I think, yeah, we just have too much air. So I'm going to bring this back to probably 0.
Never wanted to say. Awaken down.
And I'm going to leave it a little bit on the static side because, again, I don't want the tone changing too much.
Ready for this? I was somebody, can't you say? Awaken eyes. Can you cover the truth? I can be anything you dream.
Let's adjust this harmonic band to find a sweet spot where the vocals really cut.
It's all in vain, you've shown up. A soul is cratered, hopeless. Awaken eyes.
And then I'm just going to dial back the entire effect. I feel like there's too much cutting, too much boosting going on.
Awaken down.
And we can go to the mix knob and dial that in right there.
Can't you say? Awaken eyes.
There we go. That's the kind of vocal I'm looking for. Let's do before and after.
Can you cover the truth? I can be anything you dream. It's all in vain, you've shown up. A soul is cratered, hopeless. Awaken eyes.
This plugin just adds like excitement and energy to it. And I think it's that dynamic nature of this plugin with the boosting and the cutting going on. Let's listen in context.
You're headed for disaster. The flood ahead. I'm aiming for disaster.
It adds that air, baby.
Awaken eyes. Are they ready for this? I was somebody, can't you say? Awaken eyes. Can you cover the truth? I can be anything you dream. It's all in vain, you've shown up. A soul is cratered.
Amazing. I dig it. And what did I have to do? I had to turn a few knobs and it basically figured out the target for me. These tools are just getting so ridiculous. All right, now, if we combine this feature, the automatic equalization, plus the Mixsense, you won't believe how much you can transform your mix. So we have a lot of orchestral elements, especially on the chorus. There's a lot of this low-mid stuff. What we can do, we can put an instance of AQ on the synth stem, activate the sidechain so we could get access to Mixsense, feed it with the vocals, okay? And then we're going to dial this up And we're going to use this to actively remove the vocal frequencies from the synth stem. That way, it's going to clean up a lot of the low mids and stuff out of this particular stem and give the vocals a bigger space to live.
Awaken eyes, never wanted to say.
All right, so let's hear the difference when I have this bypass and not, okay? So listen to the vocals and you'll see how they feel like they get pulled forward out of this mix just by having this EQ on the synth bus. It's crazy.
The light, her one mistake wasn't killing the past, it was building walls. I feel it, that crumbled under pressure. The empty rooms are mine. That burn
And again, it's not because this is changing the tone of like the synth. It's literally just getting rid of the masking frequencies, the conflicting frequencies out of the synth stem. So if you do decide to pick up this plugin, you're basically getting Trackspacer for free. And I think this Curves AQ plugin can act almost like a learning tool. And it gives you a different perspective of what your different instruments could sound like had they had different targets or EQ shapes. I discovered that a scoot bass tone can actually sound pretty cool. And now that I know what the target shape looks like, I can do that with a regular EQ. I love the ability to be able to shift between static and dynamic adjustments as well. So what do you think? Do you own any of these automatic EQing plugins like Golfos or Nectar? Let me know in the comments below and let me know your experiences with them. Do you think these are game changing or do you think it's just going to make everything sound kind of the same? Also, let me know in the comments. And by the way, if you're finding this content helpful, I do have a membership that helps support me and allows me to make more of these videos. Click on the join button below and you can be part of the Raytown Productions community. Those few dollars each month give you a few perks and some free downloads that I have from different videos I've made. You'll also have a place in my heart. Need a drink after that one. Also want to remind you that I have a link to download my free mixing cheat sheet. Go and grab that before you take off today. My name is Bobby Balo. I'm the mixing and mastering engineer at Raytown Productions, and I'll see you in another video.